Life's greatest teacher is pain. Once upon a time, in a small village nestled between towering mountains and winding rivers, there lived a man named Ethan. Ethan was known throughout the village for his sharp mind and relentless ambition. He was the epitome of success, a wealthy businessman who owned the finest trade goods in the region, a man who everyone envied and respected. But despite his material wealth, Ethan's heart was consumed by greed, and his mind, sharp as it was clouded by the pursuit of more riches, more power, more recognition. Ethan had a motto he lived by: success is the only thing that matters. This mantra pushed him forward, driving him to cut corners, manipulate deals, and take advantage of those around him. His friends, his family, and even his employees were mere stepping stones in his relentless climb to the top. He had no time for empathy, no patience for understanding. The world was his to conquer, and nothing, no one, was going to stand in his way. For many years, Ethan's life flowed like a river of gold. His business flourished, his influence grew, and he felt invincible. But fate, as it often does, has a way of humbling the proud and testing the strong. One fateful day, a business deal he thought would secure his future for years to come turned sour. A once loyal partner betrayed him, and Ethan found himself losing everything he had worked so hard to build. His assets were seized, his investments went bankrupt, and the very foundation of his empire crumbled beneath his feet. The weight of failure hit Ethan like a tidal wave. He stood in the midst of his empty office, surrounded by the remnants of his former life, feeling as though the very ground beneath him had disappeared. His heart raced, his hands trembled, and the world seemed to spin out of control. For the first time in his life, Ethan felt the sharp sting of helplessness. There was no one to blame but himself, and the realization struck him hard. He had spent so many years chasing the illusion of success, only to find himself standing in the ruins of a life built on false promises. But what hurt more than the loss of his wealth was the loss of his self-worth. Ethan had always defined himself by his accomplishments, by the power and status he had amassed. Without those things, who was he? What was left of him? He wandered the streets of his village, feeling like a stranger in his own skin, as if the very air he breathed had turned cold and distant. In the days that followed, Ethan retreated from the world. He isolated himself in his home, consumed by his thoughts. He found no solace in the comfort of material things, no joy in the luxury that once brought him pleasure. All of it seemed meaningless now. Every object in his home, every piece of fine art, every expensive suit felt like a hollow reminder of the man he had once been, the man who had chased success at the cost of everything else. One evening, as Ethan sat by his window, staring out into the starry night, he felt a deep emptiness within him. It wasn't just the loss of money that troubled him. It was the feeling that he had lost something much more valuable, his sense of purpose. He realized that he had lived his entire life chasing the wrong things. His pursuit of wealth, power, and status had blinded him to the more important aspects of life: love, compassion, and connection. He had been so focused on building his empire that he had forgotten to build a meaningful life. That night, as he lay in bed, Ethan found himself reflecting on the choices he had made, the memories of his arrogance, his disregard for others, flooded his mind. He remembered how he had treated people as if they were tools to be used for his own gain, how he had turned a blind eye to the struggles of those around him, dismissing their pain as irrelevant to his own ambitions. And yet, despite all the harm he had caused, no one had stopped him. No one had warned him about the consequences of his actions. Ethan's mind was heavy with regret, but even more than regret, he felt something else. Fear. Fear that it was too late for him to change. Fear that he had already done too much damage to ever find redemption. The fear gnawed at him, and in that moment he realized that the pain he felt, the crushing weight of his failure, was the beginning of a new journey. A journey he had never imagined he would need to take. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Ethan's world, once filled with the hustle and bustle of business, became eerily quiet. He stopped checking his bank accounts, stopped looking at his old business contacts, and stopped seeking validation from others. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel the full extent of his pain. He didn't run from it, nor did he try to numb it with distractions. Instead, he sat with it, allowing it to wash over him like a relentless tide. It was during this time of solitude that Ethan had a revelation. He realized that pain, as much as it hurt, was a teacher. It was a teacher that had the power to strip away the illusion of the world and reveal the truth. Pain, he came to understand, was not a punishment, but a guide. A force that could lead him to wisdom if he was willing to face it. It was through pain that he would learn to grow, to change, and to rebuild his life on a foundation of humility and compassion. Ethan's transformation didn't happen overnight. It was a slow, painful process, but each day he became more aware of the ways he had wronged others and the ways he had wronged himself. He started to seek forgiveness from the people he had hurt, from the world, and most importantly, from himself. He began to understand that the greatest lesson he could learn was not how to achieve success, but how to live a life that was meaningful, a life that was rooted in love and kindness. Through the darkness of his pain, Ethan began to see a glimmer of light. The pain he had once dreaded now became his greatest ally. It was the pain that opened his eyes to the deeper truths of life, the pain that humbled him and brought him closer to the people he had once ignored. He learned that the greatest teacher in life is not success or wealth, but pain. For it is through pain that we are shaped, refined, and ultimately transformed. Ethan's story is a reminder that life's greatest lessons are often the hardest ones to learn. But it is only when we face our pain head-on, without fear or resistance, that we can begin to heal and grow. And in that growth, we find the true meaning of life, a meaning that goes far beyond the pursuit of wealth or power, a meaning that comes from living with compassion, humility, and love. The road ahead for Ethan was still uncertain, but for the first time, he was ready to walk it, knowing that with every step, he was becoming a better version of himself. And in that, he found peace. In the weeks that followed, Ethan began to realize that his journey towards healing wasn't just about reflecting on his past mistakes. It was about learning to live in a way that honored the lessons his pain had taught him. As he ventured deeper into the quiet of his own thoughts, he knew that he had to make a change. But how? How could he reconcile with the world he had so carelessly torn apart? One evening, feeling particularly restless, Ethan left his home and wandered into the countryside. He found himself in a remote area, far from the distractions of his former life. As he walked aimless through the tall grass, he spotted a small temple in the distance. The weathered stone walls and ancient wooden doors stood like a silent guardian of time, untouched by the modern world. Something about it called to him, and he instinctively walked toward it. The temple was serene, nestled among the trees and surrounded by the quiet hum of nature. It was a place where the weight of the world seemed to melt away, leaving only the present moment. Ethan felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years, and for the first time since his downfall, he felt a glimmer of hope. As he entered the temple, he was greeted by an elderly monk who was sitting quietly, his face serene, his eyes calm and knowing. The monk's presence exuded a quiet wisdom that immediately put Ethan at ease. Without saying a word, the monk gestured for Ethan to sit beside him. Ethan, still struggling with his inner turmoil, took the seat. The monk sat in silence for a long time, allowing the sound of the wind rustling through the trees to fill the space between them. After a while, the monk spoke softly, his voice like a gentle breeze. "Pain is the greatest teacher," he said, his words carrying a weight that resonated deep within Ethan's soul. "It comes into our lives not to punish us, but to open our hearts, to strip away the illusions we cling to, and to reveal the truth. The question is not how to avoid pain, but how to learn from it." Ethan listened intently, absorbing the monk's words. It was as if a veil had been lifted, and for the first time in his life, he saw things clearly. He had spent so many years running from discomfort, trying to numb his pain with success and material possessions. But now, sitting in the presence of this wise monk, Ethan understood that pain was not an enemy to be defeated, but a teacher to be embraced. Over the next few days, Ethan stayed at the temple, meditating in silence, reflecting on his life, and listening to the monk's teachings. He learned that true peace could only come when one let go of the need to control everything, when one stopped fighting against the natural flow of life. The monk spoke often of the importance of compassion, both towards others and oneself. He explained that it was only through compassion that one could begin to heal the wounds caused by past actions. In one of their conversations, Ethan asked the monk, "But how can I forgive myself? I have hurt so many people. I have betrayed the trust of my family, my friends, and even my employees. How can I ever make up for what I have done?" The monk smiled gently. "Forgiveness does not require you to erase the past, but to understand it. When you can see the pain you caused through the eyes of compassion, you will begin to see that it was your own suffering that led you to hurt others. The key is not in blaming yourself or others, but in accepting that we are all connected and that we all make mistakes." The path to forgiveness begins with recognizing that pain is a shared experience, one that can bring us closer together if we allow it. Ethan's heart stirred as he listened. He had always viewed forgiveness as something that only the wrongdoer sought. But now he understood that it was not just about seeking forgiveness from others, it was about forgiving himself. The monk's words began to unlock something deep within him, something he had been holding onto for far too long. Days passed, and Ethan's mind began to clear. He no longer felt the desperate need to prove himself or to seek validation from the outside world. Instead, he began to focus on the things that truly mattered: his relationships, his values, and his inner peace. He understood now that happiness did not come from what he had achieved, but from who he had become. One afternoon, after weeks of quiet contemplation and healing, the monk spoke again, his voice soft but firm. "Ethan, the true measure of your growth is not in what you can acquire or accomplish, but in what you can give. The pain you have suffered has shown you what truly matters in life: compassion, humility, and connection. Now, it is time for you to share these gifts with the world." Ethan knew that the monk was right. It was time for him to stop living in isolation, to stop hiding from his past. He had learned the lesson that pain had been trying to teach him all along, that the true meaning of life was found not in wealth or success, but in the relationships we build, the kindness we show, and the wisdom we gain from our struggles. As he left the temple and returned to the village, Ethan felt lighter than he had in years. The weight of his past no longer held him captive. He walked with purpose now, not in pursuit of material gain, but in pursuit of a life filled with love, compassion, and understanding. But even as he embraced his new path, Ethan knew that his journey was far from over. The pain he had experienced would always be a part of him, but it no longer controlled him. Instead, he carried it with him as a reminder of the lessons he had learned and as a guide for the future. Ethan's story was far from perfect. He had made many mistakes, and the scars of his past would never completely fade. But he had come to understand that pain was not something to be feared or avoided. It was a teacher, a guide, and a companion on the journey toward self-discovery and growth. And so, Ethan continued on his path, a man transformed, not by the wealth or success he had once craved, but by the lessons he had learned through his pain, and by the compassion he had found within himself. It was this newfound wisdom that he would carry forward, hoping that it would inspire others to see the value in their own struggles and to embrace the painful moments of life as opportunities for growth. Months passed since Ethan's journey had begun, and with each passing day, he grew more attuned to the quieter rhythms of life. The bustling world he once knew seemed distant now, almost foreign. The business deals, the expensive dinners, the power he had once craved, none of it mattered anymore. In its place, he found himself yearning for something deeper, something far more meaningful than wealth or success. Ethan now spent his days helping others in the village, offering guidance where he could, and sharing the wisdom he had learned from his time at the temple. He often visited the elderly, offering them comfort and companionship, and worked with the children, teaching them the importance of compassion, integrity, and the understanding that life wasn't just about what one could take, but about what one could give. The village, once only a place of material ambitions, was now a community rooted in empathy and connection. But even as Ethan grew in these new ways, doubts still lingered. He wondered if his past could truly be forgiven. Could he ever make up for the harm he had caused? Could he ever truly redeem himself? These thoughts weighed heavily on his mind, especially when he looked at the faces of those he had once wronged. One day, as he sat by the river contemplating these questions, a familiar face appeared before him. It was Robert, his former business partner, the man who had betrayed him in the past, leading to the collapse of Ethan's empire. Ethan's heart clenched at the sight of him, a rush of anger and resentment surging up from the depths of his being. But he quickly stilled his emotions, taking a deep breath, and reminded himself of the lessons he had learned. "Robert," Ethan greeted him, his voice calm but heavy with the weight of their shared history. "What brings you here?" Robert hesitated before sitting down next to Ethan. His expression was somber, filled with regret. "I came to apologize," Robert began, his voice low. "I know that my actions destroyed everything you had worked for. I took everything from you, and I can never take that back. But I want you to know that I've spent these past months reflecting on my own mistakes, and I've come to realize the pain I caused you was nothing compared to the pain I caused myself. I've been living with that guilt, and it has eaten away at me." Ethan remained silent for a moment, his thoughts racing. The past was filled with anger and betrayal, but the man sitting beside him now was not the same man he had known. Robert's words had a sincerity that Ethan hadn't expected. "I have forgiven you, Robert," Ethan said quietly, the words surprising even him. "Not because you deserve it, but because I need to free myself from the pain of holding on to the past. I understand now that the more I hold on to resentment, the more I hurt myself." Tears welled up in Robert's eyes. "I don't know if I deserve your forgiveness, but I will spend the rest of my life trying to be a better man. You've shown me that redemption is possible, even for someone like me." Ethan smiled, a soft and knowing smile. "Redemption is possible for all of us, Robert. It's not about erasing the past, but about learning from it. It's about understanding that pain, while it may break us, can also rebuild us if we allow it." As Robert left, a sense of peace settled in Ethan's heart. It was in this moment that he realized forgiveness was not a single act, but a continuous journey. It wasn't just about forgiving others, it was about forgiving himself. In doing so, he had unlocked a door to a future full of possibilities. But this was not a future where wealth or success would define him. It was a future where the true value of life lay in love, compassion, and the ability to connect with others. Ethan's story was not one of perfection or a fairy tale ending. It was instead the story of a man who learned to embrace his flaws, who faced his pain head-on, and who came out on the other side a better, more humble person. His journey was marked by struggles, mistakes, and moments of doubt. But in those very moments, he found the most profound truths about life and about himself. The lesson he had learned was simple, yet profound. Life's greatest teacher is pain. Pain, though it may feel unbearable in the moment, has the power to change us in ways that joy and comfort never can. It pushes us to confront our own limitations, to let go of the things that no longer serve us, and to open our hearts to the beauty of human connection. As Ethan walked through the village that day, a quiet contentment filled his heart. He had finally let go of the weight of his past and found peace in the present. He no longer sought validation from the world around him. Instead, he sought to live a life rooted in compassion, kindness, and understanding. In the years that followed, Ethan continued to help those in need, offering wisdom and support to anyone who sought it. He became known as the wise man of the village, not because of his wealth or his accomplishments, but because of the way he lived, quietly, humbly, and with a deep sense of gratitude for every lesson life had taught him. Ethan's transformation was a testament to the power of pain to heal and shape us into the people we are meant to be. It showed that even the darkest moments of our lives can lead to the brightest opportunities for growth and redemption. And most importantly, it proved that no matter how far we may fall, we always have the ability to rise again, stronger, wiser, and more compassionate than before. And so, Ethan's journey continued, not as a man seeking success, but as a man seeking truth. And in that pursuit, he found the greatest treasure of all, inner peace.